Hello, good people. Welcome to the July 2025 Scroll Report, where we scroll past the month of June to see if there was anything worth keeping. Did you have a good June 2025? I had a super June 2025. It was a little cooler than most Junes, so we did a lot of early spring activities. Got a lot of kite flying in this June. June was also Pride Month, and we all showed out. We went to the Tacoma Park Pride Parade with my granddaughters and my daughter, all marched and had a great time. I'm going to put the photos on my iCloud and link it in the newsletter so that I can share it with you. And if anybody would like to share with me the Pride activities that you did in last month, I'd love to see them. June was also had the Silver Spring Blues Festival, and I went down to see it on Saturday when it was live downtown in the plaza. I didn't get to see any of the late night concerts because I'm kind of an early bird. So if you would like to share your experiences with the Blues Festival, send your clips my way and I'll put them on my channel. So June is famously a wedding month, and there are lots of weddings. Did anybody have any weddings? How would you like to have the Venice Biennale as your reception? Boy, that Jeff Bezos, and boy, did he luck out with this one. Good for you, Jeff. But seriously, Dr. William Richards, architecture writer with the American Institute of Architects, put an article out in the architecture paper about the Venice Biennale having its moment with the vernacular, which tends to mean the established language of a particular movement. And I think that it is interesting the way that we're trying to use traditional architectural techniques to deal with problems that they normally haven't been. And I think that it seems that the Biennale this year kind of highlighted a lot of that. So his article is well worth going over that to kind of look at where we are in trying to manifest this future. So if you weren't marching in Pride in June, were you marching with the military? Or were you marching against kings? It seems like you could only do one, not the other. Even here in Washington, D.C., where we did get our military parade, a big, beautiful military parade. The No Kings folks backed out of D.C. proper. No Kings marches were in downtown D.C. I think maybe that was for the best. I think this month went pretty well with that kind of division happening. All in all, fairly okay. Yeah, well, I'm kind of having trouble getting to the truth of it. What is the truth of the matter? Was it a big, beautiful military parade, or was it a squeaky old engine and crickets? And did the people who came have a good time, or were they stiffed like they usually are at a Trump rally? Did the No Kings movement take over, and did we actually find a way out with that? Were connections made there so that we can retrench and reinforce and come back again stronger and more democratic? I just don't know what is real anymore. I've lost one of my anchors, or one of my pilot lights, I guess you would call it, was the YouTube channel Wisecrack. Wisecrack closed down this month. What a shame. I've been following them for more than a decade. They're basically a channel that tried to reframe all of the questions of modern life through the lens of philosophy, classical philosophy, what have you. It was started out by a group with forefronted by Jared Brower, who he kind of left a few years back still. Back in the early days, they had really great sections in Wisecrack, like Thug Notes, where they would evaluate classic literature through the perspective of a thug or thug vernacular, as it were. And Earthling Cinema is kind of looking at American or looking at cinema from an alien's perspective. And Jared Bauer has been still putting out his own vlog, and it's a lot of subject matter like, 20 years later, I finally understand The Godfather. Recently, I finally understand The Dark Knight, things like that. And Wisecrack has been, up until last month, fronted by Michael Burns, who is a philosophy professor and basically gave video essays using philosophy to kind of help guide us through the quandaries of postmodern life. But I guess he was unceremoniously let go in June and has been trying to regroup from that. And so has started his own vlog, who I follow. I kind of look at Michael Burns as a role model in the vlogging space. Hank Green is another great role model for vlogging. But he put out an article in June a video essay in June that really struck me about the nature of postmodernism. And his thesis was mostly to assert that postmodernism per se is not a philosophy. It isn't something that we can use to define reality. It's more of a condition. At least from Burns' perspective. As I said, Burns comes from a more philosophical orientation. My view of postmodernism has always been artistic, and kind of like a literary artistic historical perspective of postmodernism mainly just being a catch-all basket for everything that came after modernism. And I always found that if you do try to nail down postmodernism, it kind of slips around and doesn't really stay coherent. So I mainly look at postmodernism as a phenomenon like post-impressionism, as just a catch-all for everything until something really starts to happen that we can say this is an ism time. I'm kind of getting that feeling that it is. But to circle back into Michael Burns' essay and how he was talking about how postmodernism, two of the main problems with postmodernism, number one is its entanglement with capitalism, and how the good of capitalism is always fighting with the bad of capitalism. And sometimes it's the most ironic, especially on this platform, of the YouTube video platform, where you see people doing highly spiritual videos and then, hey, give me money, and I need to get monetized. But so, I think that's one of the main quandaries of postmodernism. I'm personally hoping that I can skirt it a little bit, but we all have to deal with it. I feel worst for the sports bloggers, the ones who are coming out and saying, "Oh, we can tell the impact that betting is having on sports these days. It's getting to the point where it's the only motivation for sports anymore. And this podcast is being brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings. You know, it's kind of cringy, isn't it? But I think the other aspect of postmodernism that is really difficult to struggle with these days is the disconnect with history. There's no real historicity in postmodernism. It's been replaced with nostalgia. And when we get divorced from our history is when bad things really start to happen. And look, we all know this. We know this is, when we're being detached from our history, we know bad stuff's down around the corner. And that leads to a lot of anxiety and angst and, the looking for a way out, right? So, postmodernism, what is real? What is reality anymore? What is true? What is permitted? Well, at least my critical thinking faculties were confirmed somewhat this month with the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Wasn't that something? I was going to include it in last month's scroll report about something that I had seen about Sheila E. having testified at the Diddy trial. How she had talked to Prince a week before his death about the stuff that was happening at record labels and that was encouraging the sort of behavior that Diddy was accused of. And I was all like, gosh, oh my, that's really a big deal. Sheila E. But wait a minute. Isn't that a little bit of hearsay? Would that be admissible in a criminal trial? Such hearsay? I wonder. So before I put it into the scroll report, I went and checked it and tried to find the source of that and what her testimony actually was. And of course, Sheila E. did not testify at the Diddy trial. She was in Los Angeles receiving an award that same day. She couldn't have been in two places at once, at least not yet. And furthermore, if she had been, that all would have been hearsay, inadmissible, bullshit, right? I'm glad that I caught it. It kind of made me feel a little bit more like, hey, I do have a little bit of a catch on reality these days. Lord have mercy, when is it going to break? And of course, the verdict just came out, actually in July, but it should still go back here that a verdict did come out. And of course, what I've got to say about that is that the burden of proof is a heavy one. And that is a good thing in a democracy. That's all. So I think we're seeing a pattern here. One of the best ways out of this division, partisanship, fear, paranoia is history. It's very important to keep attached to your history. To that end, I'm reading this book now, Freeman's Challenge. It's about the Auburn State Prison that was built in New York in the early 1800s. And it was the fulcrum of a radical shift in incarceration philosophy in the United States during the last days of slavery. You know, up until that point, the dominant philosophy of incarceration was being held by the Quakers, who believed that incarceration was and punishment was a way to rehabilitate, reform, and rescue humanity. And that was often seen as the mission in these places until until Auburn was built, when it began to be seen that this could be a remarkable source of free labor for building cities, and kind of became the northern alternative to slavery. And after the Civil War, it became a reasonable alternative to the people who did practice enforced labor. So, yeah, Freeman's Challenge by Robin Bernstein is a real strong analysis of the factors that made up our incarceration nation, and it goes on even today with this so-called alligator Alcatraz. Do we really know what's going on there? Angela Y. Davis reviews this book, Freeman's Challenge, a provocative, robust, and rigorously researched interrogation of the historical meaning of imprisonment. Bernstein's compelling narrative provides insight not only into the institution of the prison in the United States, but also into the lives of those whose newly experienced dreams of freedom were crushed by evolving intersections of punishment and racial capitalism. By disengaging the emergence of the prison from what it has become inevitable partner, rehabilitation, Bernstein deftly reveals the deep connections between imprisonment, racism, and the development of a capitalist economy. Very good reading, very well written, and very, very thoroughly covered. I'm really enjoying this book, Freeman's Challenge. Freeman's Challenge asks some hard questions. One of the first questions out of the gate was, why didn't African American activists take a stronger role in reforming the Auburn State Prison in the first place? Bernstein answers that very, very well, but I'm a little incensed that the question was even asked in the first place. Let's try and figure out what reality is again, shall we? I mean, did y'all hear about the Target boycott? Apparently, there's been a huge boycott of Target to the point where Target has lost like 30% of their revenue and stock value in 2025. The boycott is being spearheaded by Reverend Jamal Bryant in Georgia, asking for a boycott of Target because of their walking back of their DEI commitments. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, some of it you could kind of like because, okay, so they're not buying as much inventory from Black-owned businesses right now. But they promised to set up a bank that was going to help Black businesses get off the ground and was thereby going to improve our entire community. And they walked that back. I kind of see that as very good grounds for a boycott. But the question is it the actual boycott that's having this impact? And okay, even if it is having this impact, then what? Is Target going to give in and say, oh no, we're going to go back and do all of our DEI promises? Or are other businesses going to kind of try and not to be a target, so they'll keep their DEI programs running a little more? But personally, I am in awe of Reverend Bryant's strategy. You know, he's basically saying, we're going to stick with Target. We're going to make sure that Target understands that this is why they're suffering. And then once that comes to a head, we might move on. I think that is just brilliant. Hats off to Reverend Jamal Bryant for showing us a way out. And also a reminder to stay away from Target. Well, I did find another anchor of truth in June 2025. Steve Ballmer, the old Windows wizard, has launched a project that he calls Just the Facts, a website that gives the definite facts about anything. So you go to that website and you check it out, and there's where you can glean a little truth out of the world today. A lot of tech news in June 2025. Of course, there was the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference where Apple showcased its new upcoming operating system user interface they call Liquid Glass. I kind of like it. It's okay. I'm just a little bit perturbed at Apple right now because I was all in on skeuomorphism, and then I was all in on flat design, and now I'm going to be all in on this liquid glass. Hey, flat design was supposed to be the end all of this stuff, but I guess, every few years Apple's going to pipe in and tell us what's cool again. And then the David and Goliath story of the month was how ChatGPT got absolutely wrecked at a chess game by a 1970s era Atari 2600. That was quite a shock, I think, to a lot of people, that AI as a language model isn't able to run a computer chess as well as a video game that was designed to do that. Well, ChatGPT confused rooks for bishops, missed pawn forks, and repeatedly lost track of where pieces were. First, blaming the Atari icons as too abstract, and then faring no better than even after switching to standard chess notations. It made enough blunders to get laughed out of a third grade chess club. ChatGPT got absolutely wrecked at the beginner level. Well, every once in a while it's fun to watch David get stomped, huh? Well, wait, who is the David in that situation? Is it ChatGPT or the Atari 2700? Oh well, it's perfectly clear to see who the David is in this imbroglio of Stop Killing Games. A game publisher named Ross Scott opened up a petition to the European Commission to call for an initiative requiring video game publishers to leave their video games in a functional, playable state. It means preventing remote disabling of video games before providing reasonable means to continue functioning. Doesn't mean to acquire ownership of games or anything. It just expects that the publisher provides reasonable resources for those video games. It was met with a lot of backlash, specifically from a Thor of pirate software who underwent a misinformation campaign to try and block this petition from growing, which had kind of the opposite effect. It helped it grow even stronger. And really, it's not that hard to advocate for that. I personally have been very concerned about the public domain of video games. We're still a good 40, 50 years away from really having to answer that question, but a lot of the times these problems are starting to show themselves. For instance, my particular orientation has to do with library keeping, archiving of old video games, and being able to play an original Windows 3.1 Galaga or a Doom or something like that. And having libraries, books you can kind of understand. The written word after 100 years becomes a public domain. It's pretty easy to distribute that. Paintings, I think we've kind of seen the same kind of problem with recordings, movies, and records. what happens when they get into the public domain. And now video games are going to be having that problem. Is like, what's going to happen if a video game that's 100 years old, how is it going to be played? And whose responsibility is it to keep it playing? And I am a big advocate of extended producer responsibility. I do believe that the producers of these video games should have an inherent responsibility for making them available in perpetuity. Maybe not as a consumable product, but at least as something as an archival product. But anyway, that's my soapbox. The issue with Stop Killing Games is that they just are pushing for more extended producer responsibility and the copyright and protection of intellectual property such as video games. The EU is looking it up, and I am very glad that that the Stop Killing Games was actually bolstered by a little bit of trolling and misinformation. It's a good thing to see. On the other hand, when you really don't care who wins because we'll end up losing, the Anthropic and Meta lawsuit has been kind of seesawing back and forth. Both companies, Anthropic and Meta, both won landmark victories in two separate cases that examined whether or not the firms had violated copyright when they trained their LLMs, large language models, on copyrighted books without permission. So, the use of copyrighted works to train models, it's similar lawsuits coming out. Let me see if I can drill down into the details a little bit. A group of authors, including high-profile names such as Sarah Silverman and Ta-Nehisi Coates, set out to prove that Anthropic had violated their copyright by using their books to train large language models. Ruling in Anthropic's favor, however, Senior District Judge William Alsop argued that the firm's use of the books was legal because what it did with them was transformative, meaning that it did not replace the original works, but made something new from them. In Meta's case, the district judge made a different argument. He also sided with the technology company, but he focused his ruling on instead whether the issue was that Meta had harmed the market for the author's work. Judge Cabrera said that he thought Alsop had brushed aside the importance of market harm, same outcome, two very different rulings, not exactly clear what it means for all of the other cases. So, yeah, I guess more to come. Where does that leave us? They basically, as far as I can tell, big companies are able to use your work to train their AIs, and as long as it doesn't hurt you physically, I guess, then they should be allowed to carry on. Anyway, that's still going to be going around and around, and we're still going to be trying to figure it all out, and everyone's going to do what the F they want anyway. Right? Looks like I should be going to Substack. All the cool kids are going to Substack. Carol Cadwalader, Rebecca Ryan, Mark Fiore. Those are three people I'm following on Substack. Who are you following? So we have the epistemic crisis. That's the crisis of what is real and what is true. We also have the crisis in physics these days. There's a huge struggle in physics right now over the measurement problem, mainly. It's got to do with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle that you can't measure position and angular momentum at the same time. So when physicists, they're mostly faced with this double slit experiment where the photons are being bombarded through two slits, but they show interference patterns as if they're waves or not, and they can't identify the point at which a photon stops being stops being a wave and becomes a particle, or that quote unquote wave function collapse. And so, because there seems to be impossible to measure that, physicists have to rely on a lot of mathematical fudging and sometimes have to concentrate on just concentrating on the math and nothing else. My problem with it is when people start inventing new stuff. Anyway, I'm nowhere near qualified to enter that fray. I'm mostly watching a quote unquote debate. It's more of a friendly conversation between PBS Spacetime's Matt O'Dowd and Sabina Hossenfelder, another YouTube scientist, a physicist. They are kind of at loggerheads at the moment. I think I tend to side with Sabine a little bit more in the fact that I believe that there's way too much fudging going on in physics right now for us to be really certain about what we're actually measuring. And Matt O'Dowd just did a PBS Spacetime episode where he kind of confronted a lot of that, having to do with getting down to the Planck scale and how we can move down the scale and then suddenly we've got to move like 60 steps to the next step in the scale, which kind of makes that scale look like we're probably not doing something right. So I am very happy that physicists have that skepticism and are feeding that skepticism to the public that, like, whoa, wait a minute, we could be wrong here. There could be a lot wrong here, a lot that we don't know. And so that we keep moving. But myself, I'm really not sure where to stand in this conversation, being that, I was skeptical that the Higgs boson would ever be discovered. But so really a lot of it right now is just trying to figure out why the Higgs boson measures out to zero mass. So that's the big crisis in physics right now. I think it's heating up lately, so it'll be very interesting. I mean, hopefully the Large Hadron Collider will keep giving us some kind of data that at least we can use some kind of fudged math with. I don't know. So in other science news, we got some really good visuals in June. We got the Vera Ruben Observatory sending out the first images from the observatory. Cosmic treasure chest, swarm of new asteroids, rhythm in the stars, and Trifid and Lagoon nebulae. Very beautiful pictures, very awe-inspiring to watch them. And the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. has finally completed their 3D digital scan and now are offering a 3D virtual tour of the cathedral's architecture and iconography in stunning detail through this new visual experience. Highly recommended. Very, very nice. Yeah, now in music, TV, and movies, not a lot in the way of movies this last month. I didn't see a whole lot that I could really report on. A lot of empty promises. Summer's coming, so hopefully there'll be something coming this summer. I'm not really holding my breath. In the meantime, I've been binging the Riddick movies, Vin Diesel's Riddick movies. Love those movies. I think what really attracts me to them is that Vin Diesel is kind of showing everybody how to stick to your values, how to keep it on your spine, as he likes to say. Keep a strong spine. And I like watching those movies to kind of get that inspiration to stay strong in the face of adversity. I thoroughly enjoyed the Bono documentary on Surrender. One of my takeaways from that was where he was saying that Charity stands in the place of justice. So we need to have charity when we don't have justice. Love that idea. Love carrying that idea. I wasn't so impressed with the Becoming Led Zeppelin documentary. I was having a good time with it until near the end, they just played the entire studio track of Whole Lot of Love with some B-roll over top of it. And it's like, are you just weren't able to make the movie run as long as you wanted it to? So you stuck this in there just to fill it out? Anyway, left a bad taste in my mouth from that. Not really, couldn't really get a whole lot else about Led Zeppelin from there. I guess one thing I did get from them was how Jimmy Page started out saying that he started the band, the New Yardbirds, as it were, as an AOR band, an album-oriented rock rather than a singles pop band. But it's kind of ironic how Led Zeppelin now is mostly known for their iconic singles, such as Whole Lot of Love and Stairway to Heaven. So that's interesting. But you know what I've really had the most fun with in June was this TV show called American Ninja Warrior. Yeah, it's kind of a guilty pleasure, maybe, as I do kind of feel a little guilty because I just love that show. What a great show! American Ninja Warrior. All these people like doing these obstacle courses, and they all come with these most inspirational stories. It's like, oh, I've been bothered by acne for so long, but doing American Ninja Warrior trained me to keep my mind off it. And I'm all like, oh, that's just so inspirational. Oh, it's so great. And then, of course, I also get the Dunning-Kruger effect because, I have no grip strength whatsoever. I can barely even do a chin-up. But I'm watching these people swing around in these obstacle courses. I'm like, oh, yeah, you didn't hold on to that enough. You took too many swings on that. And suddenly I'm an expert at all this stuff. But, that's entertainment. That's how we do it. I'm also been listening to musically a lot of Mono Neon. Just love Mono Neon a lot. He's just doing stuff with the bass that I listen to a whole lot of innovative bass players, but that Mono Neon is just extra. And I've also been assessing a lot over Beatie Wolf and Brian Eno collabs. See if you can catch some of those on YouTube. They're fascinating. I'm really obsessed with Beatie Wolf now. I'm trying to leave some room, some space for my art projects I'm working on lately. Hopefully future scroll reports will have much more content than I have been including, because I've been kind of lazy lately. The only thing I've been working on is what I call lesser spells of banishment. So I have two of them here. One is a lesser spell of banishment, and one is a lesser spell of manifestation. And it all has to do with the direction that you form the pentagram, if it's Dio Sol or Widdershins. But can you tell which one's manifestation and which one is banishment? No, you can't, and I can't anymore either. And I think that was the lesson of this, is that any kind of spell of banishment is really a spell of manifestation. You're manifesting the banishment of negativity. And so, I think that was the lesson that was going to come out of this. More is still coming. More is still coming. We're definitely going to be developing. And I've also got a tutorial, a Photoshop tutorial on color correction. I'll link that in the newsletter as well. But I'm looking for stuff too. If you have artworks that you want to share, send me a line. If you have movie reviews you want to share, TV, is your music, you want to send me your demo and I'll curate it. Let's make this a conversation. Leave comments below and we'll keep growing through this scroll report. In the meantime, I'll see you next month when we go over July. Thanks for subscribing to the Scroll Report, and I hope your July 2025 is the best July 2025 that ever was. Thanks again for your eyes. Bye.